The courtroom smelled faintly of disinfectant and stale air, the kind of smell that lingers after years of silence and judgment. 12-year-old Amara sat on the wooden bench, her small hands gripping the worn edges, her eyes fixed on the man in handcuffs standing before the judge. That man was her father, David Nusu, a quiet, hard-working construction worker accused of something she knew he didn't do. Her heart pounded so loud she was sure the entire courtroom could hear it. The prosecutor's voice sliced through the silence like a blade. "Your Honor, the evidence is clear. The fingerprints on the murder weapon, the CCTV footage placing him near the scene." Amara's chest tightened. Lies. She had watched that footage 100 times on her mom's old laptop. It was grainy, the timestamp corrupted, the angle distorted. It could have been anyone. Yet her father stood there, his dark skin gleaming with sweat, his lips pressed tight as if holding in a storm. When the judge called for recess, Amara jumped from her seat, clutching the small locket around her neck. Inside it was a photo of her father holding her on the day she was born. He'd built her a wooden crib with his own hands, painted it yellow, her favorite color. How could anyone believe that man could kill? Outside the courtroom, reporters crowded the hallway. Cameras flashed. A voice shouted, "Little girl, do you think your father's guilty?" Another said, "Tell us what really happened that night, sweetheart." Amara froze, her voice barely a whisper. "He didn't do it." Her Aunt Grace, standing beside her, pulled her away protectively. "Don't talk to them," she whispered harshly. "People twist words." But Amara couldn't stop thinking. Someone set him up. Someone wanted him gone. And she had seen something that night. Something nobody believed when she told them. 2 weeks before the murder, a man in a black SUV had followed them home after her father's shift. She remembered the tinted windows, the sound of the engine idling in the dark. When she told her father, he'd brushed it off. "Probably just lost, sweetie." But she'd seen fear flicker in his eyes, just for a second. Now, sitting in the hallway, she opened her small notebook. Inside were drawings, scribbles, and clues, things she'd collected since his arrest. Names, numbers, dates, even a strange barcode she'd copied from a crate she saw at his worksite. Something told her it mattered. That night, she sneaked into the small motel room where she and Aunt Grace were staying. Grace was asleep, snoring softly, a Bible on her chest. She turned on the dim desk lamp, pulled out her tablet, and searched for the barcode she'd written down. It belonged to a private security company, Ironclad Security Systems. She gasped. That was the same company that handled surveillance for the construction site where her father worked. They also managed the camera footage that supposedly proved he was at the crime scene. Her mind raced. What if someone from that company had tampered with the video? She needed help. But who would believe a 12-year-old girl? The next morning, Amara walked alone to the courthouse. A man in a gray suit with a coffee stain on his sleeve bumped into her. "You lost, kid?" he asked kindly. She looked up. His ID badge read, "Detective Cole Rivers." Her heart skipped. She'd heard that name before. He was the only cop who had doubts about her father's guilt, according to the news. Gathering all her courage, she blurted out, "Detective Rivers, my dad didn't do it. I have proof." He blinked, surprised. "You what?" Amara handed him her notebook. He flipped through the pages, frowning at her childlike drawings and codes. "You've been doing your own investigation?" She nodded fiercely. "I saw the car that followed us. I wrote down the numbers on the license plate. Here." She pointed at a messy scribble. Cole's eyes narrowed. "Where did you get this?" "I told you. They followed us." He exhaled slowly. All right, Amara. I can't promise anything, but I'll look into it. That night, Amara waited in the cold outside the police station, her small figure shivering in the streetlight glow. Hours passed, until Cole emerged, his face pale. "Kid, you might be onto something. That SUV belongs to a man named Caleb Dorn, the head of Ironclad Security Systems." Amara's mouth dropped open. "The company that made the footage?" "Exactly." He knelt down beside her, but listen carefully. "If what I think is true, these people are dangerous. You need to stay somewhere safe." But Amara's eyes burned with determination. "No, I need to help my dad." Over the next few days, Detective Rivers secretly reopened the case files. He discovered inconsistencies. Timestamps altered, fingerprints duplicated using silicone molds. Someone had deliberately framed David Nusu. Then, 2 nights before the final court hearing, Cole's apartment was broken into. His files were stolen. The hard drive containing evidence vanished. The only copy left was the USB Amara had secretly backed up on her tablet. She had made it the night Cole showed her the footage comparison. But now, someone knew. As she walked home with her aunt from the grocery store the next evening, a black SUV slowed down near the corner. Her stomach tightened. The same one. She tugged on her aunt's arm. "Auntie, that's them!" Before Grace could turn, the SUV sped off, splashing water onto the pavement. Amara watched the plate disappear into the distance. That night, she couldn't sleep. The city outside buzzed with sirens and honking cars, but inside her chest, only silence. She opened her tablet again, staring at the file name truthproof.mp4. Tomorrow was the final hearing. The next morning, she stood in the courtroom again. Her father looked tired but calm, as if he had accepted his fate. The prosecutor was already smiling. "Your Honor, we have nothing new to add. The defense has failed to produce credible evidence." David's public defender barely lifted his head. It was hopeless. Then Amara stood. Her voice trembled, but her words were steady. "Your Honor, please, I have something to show." The courtroom gasped. The judge looked startled. "Young lady, you cannot—" "Please," she said louder, "this is my dad's life. Just look at this." She walked forward, clutching her tablet. Her small hands shook as she handed it to the bailiff. The screen came alive with grainy footage, 2 clips side by side. One was the original security video showing David at the crime scene. The other, processed by Cole before the break-in, revealed mismatched frames. The background light poles in the second video didn't exist at that location. Someone had inserted fake visuals to frame him. Murmurs filled the courtroom. The judge leaned closer, eyes narrowing. "Where did you get this?" Amara swallowed. "From the police system, before someone deleted it. Detective Rivers helped me." The prosecutor's face went pale. "This is inadmissible." But the judge raised a hand. "Quiet." David turned to his daughter, tears welling in his eyes. "Amara." At that moment, 2 officers burst through the doors. It was Detective Rivers, bruised, exhausted, but alive. "Your Honor, the evidence is real. Ironclad Security altered the footage. The CEO, Caleb Dorn, has been arrested." Gasps filled the courtroom. The judge looked from Rivers to the screen, then to David. "This court will take a short recess before ruling." Amara ran to her father, hugging him tightly. For the first time in months, his hands, although cuffed, trembled with hope instead of fear. But even as the courtroom erupted in whispers, Amara felt something strange. A shadow near the door. A gloved hand disappearing behind the curtains. Someone was still watching. And she knew, deep down, this wasn't over. The moment the judge called for recess, chaos erupted inside the courtroom. Reporters swarmed forward, shouting questions over each other.
Flashing cameras stung Amara's eyes as she clung to her father's arm. 2 guards stepped in, pushing the crowd back, but she could feel the electricity in the air. Shock, anger, disbelief. Detective Rivers moved toward them, his lips split, one side of his face bruised purple. "You did it, kid. But we're not safe yet. They know the video's out." "What do you mean?" Amara asked, her voice small. "They'll try to bury this before it hits the news." Within minutes, the judge returned. "Mr. Nwosu will remain in custody while the new evidence is verified. Court adjourned." His tone was firm, but Amara saw something new in his eyes. Doubt. Hope flickered for the first time. As guards led David back toward the holding cells, he glanced over his shoulder. "Be careful, my little lion," he murmured. Outside, the courthouse steps were flooded with people. News vans lined the street, and the bright afternoon light reflected off dozens of camera lenses. Detective Rivers shielded Amara and her aunt as they pushed through. A black sedan pulled up to the curb. "Get in," Rivers said. Grace hesitated. "Where are we going?" "To my precinct. It's the only place with secured evidence storage left." They climbed in. Amara's hands trembled in her lap as the city blurred by, skyscrapers glinting gold, traffic roaring, the hum of life oblivious to the storm brewing in her chest. Inside the precinct, everything felt colder. A humming light buzzed above as Rivers guided them through a corridor lined with frosted glass doors. "We'll keep you here until I can get a federal warrant for the security logs." Amara nodded, but her mind was elsewhere, on the shadow she'd seen at the courtroom door. Hours later, as evening settled, Grace dozed off on the bench. Rivers sat across from Amara at his desk, scrolling through his computer. "The video's metadata was altered with high-level encryption," he muttered. "Whoever did this wasn't just framing your dad. They were cleaning up something bigger." Amara frowned. "Like what?" He sighed. "I don't know yet. But ironclad security handles surveillance for half the city's government buildings. If someone inside was selling access—" His words trailed off as the power suddenly flickered. Darkness swallowed the room for a half-second before emergency lights kicked in. Rivers reached for his holster. "Stay here." He moved toward the hallway, gun drawn. Amara could hear footsteps echoing, too light for an officer. A door creaked. Then glass shattered. A black-clad figure lunged from the shadows, striking Rivers across the head. He went down hard, blood splattering against the wall. The man turned toward Amara. She froze, heart hammering, as he reached inside his jacket. Without thinking, she grabbed the nearest object, a metal desk lamp, and hurled it. It struck the man's arm. He cursed, stumbling. She bolted for the door. Running down the corridor, she could hear him behind her, boots pounding, breath rasping. She burst into the evidence room and slammed the door just as the knob rattled. Her mind raced. She spotted a red emergency phone on the wall and snatched it up. "Help! Someone's in the precinct!" Static. No response. The line was dead. Through the small glass window, she saw the man raise his silenced pistol. The first bullet spiderwebbed the glass. Amara ducked behind a metal shelf, gasping. Her fingers brushed against a cardboard box labeled Case Number 2247, Ironclad. Inside were photos, blueprints of city surveillance towers, payment records, and an unmarked USB. She pocketed the drive just as the lock gave way. The man stepped in slowly, scanning the room. His voice was low and calm. "You shouldn't have come this far, little girl." Her pulse thudded in her ears. He reached for her, but a gunshot echoed. The man jerked backward, dropping his weapon. Detective Rivers staggered in the doorway, blood on his temple, his gun smoking. "You all right?" he groaned. Amara nodded, shaking. "You saved me." He smiled faintly. "Guess we're even now." Sirens wailed outside as backup officers flooded the building. The attacker was cuffed and dragged away. In the chaos, Rivers pulled Amara aside. "Whatever's on that USB, guard it with your life. It's our proof now." By dawn, her father was transferred to a secured holding cell for protection. The news had already spread. New evidence may overturn murder conviction. But Ironclad's lawyers were moving fast, filing injunctions to block the video release. Rivers and Amra met again at a diner 2 blocks from the courthouse. He looked exhausted, eyes bloodshot. That guy who attacked us, his name's Mercer. Ex-Special Forces, works directly for Caleb Dorn. Amra clenched her fists. Then Dorn's still controlling everything. Rivers nodded. For now, but the USB might change that. He slid a laptop toward her. Plug it in. The drive whirred. Folders appeared, encrypted logs, emails, and a video titled Project Midas. When Rivers clicked it, a hidden camera feed filled the screen. Dorn sat in a luxurious office, speaking on the phone. "I don't care who gets blamed. Nwasu saw the documents. He had to be silenced. If the city finds out we've been selling surveillance data, we all burn." Amra's stomach dropped. "He said my dad saw something." Rivers froze the frame. He must have found proof of their corruption at the site. That's why they framed him. Before he could export the file, a message flashed on screen. "Remote access detected. Files being deleted." "Damn it!" Rivers yanked the USB out. "They're wiping it remotely. Can't we stop it?" "Only if we find where the signal's coming from, and fast." Amra stared at the corner of the video frame. Through Dorn's office window, she recognized a red billboard glowing in the distance. "I know that place. That's Midtown Plaza." Rivers blinked. "Are you sure?" "Yes. Aunt G used to work near there." He grabbed his coat. "Then that's where Dorn's base server is. Come on." They drove through the city under heavy rain, windshield wipers beating like frantic drums. Midtown Plaza loomed ahead, its glass facade reflecting streaks of lightning. Security guards stood at the entrance, but Rivers flashed his badge. Inside, the elevator chimed softly as they rode to the top floor. The tension was suffocating. Amra could feel her heartbeat in her throat. When the doors opened, they were met with silence. Rows of monitors lined the walls, each showing live camera feeds from across the city, schools, hospitals, even police stations. A sprawling map glowed in the center, threads of data connecting everywhere. "This is how they've been watching everyone," Rivers whispered. A voice echoed from the shadows. "Detective Rivers, I should have known you'd bring the kid." Caleb Dorn stepped forward, immaculate in his tailored suit, a faint smile curling his lips. 2 armed men flanked him. Rivers raised his gun. "It's over, Dorn." Dorn chuckled softly. "Confession? That file was deleted 10 minutes ago. You have nothing." Amra stepped forward, trembling but defiant. "You framed my dad because he found out you were spying on people. But I still have proof." She held up her tablet. Dorn's smile faded. "You think a child can beat me." Before anyone could move, a thunderous crack split the air. Lightning struck a transformer outside, plunging the floor into darkness. The emergency lights flickered red. Rivers shouted, "Run!" Amra sprinted toward the side door as gunfire erupted. Bullets shattered screens, sparks flying like fireflies. She ducked behind a console, clutching her tablet to her chest. Through the smoke, she saw Dorn retreating toward a back stairwell, carrying a black briefcase. Rivers tackled one of the guards but took a hit to the shoulder. "Go, Amra! Get the briefcase!" Heart pounding, she chased Dorn down the stairwell, her sneakers slapping against the metal steps. The sound of rain grew louder as they burst onto the rooftop. Dorn turned, aiming a pistol. "Stay back!" The wind whipped her hair across her face. "You ruined my dad's life!" she screamed. Lightning flashed again, illuminating his face twisted with rage and fear. Then a voice boomed behind them. "Drop the weapon!" SWAT officers swarmed the rooftop, red dots circling Dorn's chest. He froze, lowering his gun. Rivers stumbled out of the stairwell, clutching his bleeding shoulder. "It's over." But Dorn only smiled. "You think this ends with me? You've seen nothing yet." He dropped the briefcase at his feet. Inside, stacks of drives blinked faint blue, copies of every corrupted file Ironclad ever made. Rivers looked at Amra. "Take them. This is the key to freeing your father." As officers cuffed Dorn, the city below flickered with police lights cutting through the storm. Amra knelt by the case, rain mixing with tears on her face. Somewhere inside, her father sat in a cell, waiting. She whispered, "Hold on, Dad. I'm almost there." And far across the city, deep inside the jailhouse, David Nwosu looked up as thunder rolled. For the first time, he smiled.
Rain hammered the city all night, washing away the sirens and smoke. By dawn, the skyline shimmered silver, and the world felt new, except for the ache in Amara's chest. She hadn't slept. She sat in the hospital waiting room, her small hands wrapped around a paper cup of cocoa gone cold. Detective Rivers lay in recovery down the hall, a bullet still lodged near his shoulder. When she tried to thank him, he smiled weakly and said, "Finish this for both of us." The briefcase sat on her lap, heavy with secrets. Inside were drives containing years of illegal surveillance, bribes, and data sales, enough to burn ironclad security and the city officials who'd protected it to the ground. Aunt Grace paced nearby, wringing her hands. "Baby, we should go to the news. Let them handle it." Amara shook her head. "If we give this to anyone before court, they'll destroy it again. The judge has to see it." Grace sighed. "You're just a child. Why does this have to fall on you?" "Because no one else will do it," Amara whispered. Later that morning, they arrived at the courthouse under gray skies. The building loomed like a fortress. Reporters filled the steps again, shouting questions about the ironclad CEO's arrest, about the mysterious evidence leak. But Amara kept her head down, clutching the briefcase like a lifeline. Inside, the tension was unbearable. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as the case resumed. David Nwosu sat behind the defense table, his wrists uncuffed for the first time. When his eyes met his daughter's, something wordless passed between them, hope and pride tangled with fear. The judge entered, gavel cracking like thunder. "Court is now in session for the case of the state versus David Nwosu." The prosecutor rose, face tight. "Your Honor, the state requests a dismissal of all new evidence introduced by the defense. It has not been authenticated." But before the judge could respond, the door opened. Detective Rivers limped in, arm in a sling, badge glinting. "Your Honor, I can authenticate it." A hush fell. He nodded toward Amara. "She recovered these drives directly from Ironclad's mainframe. They contain confidential communications proving Mr. Nwosu was framed to conceal a data theft operation involving high-ranking officials." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The judge frowned. "Do you have proof of this claim, detective?" Rivers motioned to Amara. "Play it." With trembling fingers, Amara stepped forward and connected the drive to the courtroom projector. The screen flickered, then displayed a series of video clips. Caleb Dorn's meetings with city administrators, audio of payments being arranged, records showing how data had accidentally discovered falsified invoices at the construction site weeks before the murder. Then came the final clip, grainy but clear. Dorn's voice. "Nwosu was going to report us. Make sure the evidence points to him instead." The room exploded with murmurs. Amara looked at the judge. "He didn't just take my dad's freedom. He took our lives. Please, don't let them do it again." The judge's gaze softened. "Order! Order in the court!" The prosecutor's face drained of color. He shuffled through his papers, voice cracking. "The state withdraws its charges against Mr. Nwosu pending immediate review." Amara exhaled shakily, her knees almost giving way. Grace caught her as the judge banged his gavel. "Mr. Nwosu, you are hereby released. This court owes your family an apology." David stood slowly, disbelief clouding his features. Then Amara ran to him. He dropped to his knees as she threw her arms around his neck. His tears soaked her hair. "You did it, Amara. My brave girl, you
did it!" The courtroom broke into applause, something rare and raw. Even the judge's eyes glistened. But outside, the story was far from over. By noon, news networks across the country were airing live footage. "Ironclad security exposed in massive data fraud scandal." Protesters gathered downtown, demanding accountability. Government officials resigned by sunset. Dorn, now in custody, refused to speak, but investigators found offshore accounts and encrypted ledgers confirming everything Amara had shown. That night, Amara and her father returned to their small apartment. It felt different, warmer, alive. The cracked photo frame on the mantel still held their family picture, but the dust had been wiped away. Grace cooked stew on the stove, humming softly, the sound filling the air like forgiveness. David sat beside his daughter on the couch. "You risked everything for me," he said quietly. She smiled. "I always told you to fight for truth, no matter how hard it gets." He laughed softly. "I meant tell the teacher the truth when you break a window, not take down an entire corporation." They both laughed then, the sound unsteady but healing. But Amara's eyes drifted to the window. Across the street she noticed a van idling too long at the corner. Her laughter faded. "Dad," she murmured, "do you think it's really over?" He followed her gaze, tension flickering across his face. "It will be. Soon." The van pulled away slowly, disappearing into traffic. 2 days later, they were invited to speak at a city press conference. The mayor, newly appointed after several officials resigned, presented Amara with a medal of civic bravery. Cameras flashed as she stood at the podium, small and poised in her yellow dress. "I didn't do this alone," she said. "Detective Rivers believed me when no one else did, and my father taught me that truth isn't something you find, it's something you fight for." Applause thundered through the hall. David stood in the front row, tears glistening again, pride written all over his face. Later, in the quiet corridor behind the stage, Rivers met them. His arm was still bandaged, but he smiled. "You two changed the city today." Amara grinned. "Guess I'm your new partner now." He chuckled. "Don't tempt me, kid. I might just take you up on that." As they walked outside, the air was cool, the sky clearing after days of rain. But just as they reached the car, a man in a dark coat stepped from the shadows. Amara tensed until he handed Rivers a sealed envelope. "From the Bureau. You'll want to see this." Rivers opened it. Inside were surveillance photos, dozens of them, showing unknown individuals removing servers from an ironclad warehouse the previous night. The signature at the bottom read, "Operation Black Vigil, still active." Rivers' jaw tightened. Looks like Dorn wasn't lying when he said it didn't end with him. Amara looked up at him. "Then we stop them." He smiled faintly. "You really are your father's daughter." They stood there as dawn painted the horizon gold, the city awakening to a new day, freer, cleaner, but still shadowed by secrets waiting to be uncovered. Weeks later, Amara visited her father's new workshop. He had been rehired by a small construction company, this time as a supervisor. The sound of hammering echoed through the open windows, sunlight catching on his smile. Grace tended flowers by the door. "She's got her father's stubbornness," she joked. David looked up from his workbench. "And her mother's fire," he said softly. Amara climbed onto a stool beside him, flipping through a worn notebook, the same one she'd used to track clues months ago. But now, instead of codes and maps, she wrote something new. The truth matters. Always. She looked at her father. "I think I want to be a lawyer when I grow up." He smiled proudly. "Then the world better get ready." Outside, the sun broke through the last of the gray clouds, pouring light over the city that had once turned its back on them. The scars remained, but so did the courage that changed everything.
That night, as Amara lay in bed, she heard the distant hum of traffic and the soft murmur of her father praying in the next room. For the first time in forever, she didn't feel afraid. She closed her eyes and whispered, "We won." And somewhere deep in the city, in a dark office half emptied by raids and resignations, a single monitor flickered to life. Lines of code scrolled across the screen. Then a message appeared. Project Midas, rebuild sequence, initiated. But for now, the Nwasu family slept in peace, unaware that their story, their truth, had only just begun.